Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mind Controllers, a podcast about shining the light on the psychological aspects behind some of our favorite video games. I'm your host, Joe Moreno, joined by my co-host,
Brandon Craw.
And today we'll be switching it up, where we're going to be talking about two games, Alan Wake 1 Remastered and Tales of Kenzera.
Felt like we're going to do this because we didn't have quite enough content, or we played Alan Wake together on stream.
Yeah.
There wasn't quite enough character things. I mean, maybe we could have done like a deep dive on Barry or his wife
Alice, I think. Yeah,
Alice. Okay, Alice. But I also played through Tales of Kenzera and felt like pretty affected by it. So I really wanted to talk about it. And that's why we were like, let's just talk about two different games this time. So, but yeah, Joe, do you want to give me your thoughts on Alan Wake?
I liked it a lot. It's a remake, right? Or a remaster of an older game. Right. So it was clunky while we were playing it, right? We were switching off. You know, when I was here at your house, I'd play. Mm-hmm. And yeah, the dodge mechanic's clunky. The movement's weird. His jump is hilarious. Right. And I would mix up the buttons because I'm not used to the Xbox like outlay. Mm-hmm. Right. So it just felt a little heavy, and the driving mechanics, right?
Oh my God.
It felt like I don't know how to describe it.
You're
like
piloting a tank.
Yeah.
No matter what.
On like butter.
Yeah.
Right. Because you're like sliding all over the place.
Yeah.
But I like the narrative. I liked Alan Wake, right? We follow him, you know, through Bright Falls, right? Fighting the dark presence, the Taken. Yep. I really liked it. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
What did you think?
Same here. I felt like as a video game, it was felt a little outdated, but I still didn't mind too much. You know, if you keep that in mind while you're playing it, then it feels tolerable. There were some quite frustrating parts. I'm thinking of like the spinning room. The circular room wheel, like a Ferris wheel, but the rooms, and I had to run through them and like kept on falling, wasn't sure which way to go and got all confused. But other than that, I think that was probably the most frustrating part. Other than that, really enjoyed the narrative, loved the not sure if he's suffering from like mental illness or this is actually happening to everybody, and still feels like
it's like a bit of both.
Yeah, exactly. Like there is definitely something going on with Alan, but there is also these real world demons, monsters,
the Taken.
Something. They're called the Taken. And it was cool just to kind of see that story through, how this almost Stephen King-esque video game where whatever he writes like becomes true, right? And seeing how he writes his way out of that, and how he has to deal with his either writer's block or just his own like personal demons. Mm-hmm. So really excited to hear what you have on that one, like on Alan Wake. I'd ask like what you thought of Tales of Kenzera. I know you didn't play through it the whole way, but yeah, I don't know. Do you want to just give like a quick hot take on it?
Yeah, I like the game. It was frustrating at points with the instant death pits, the spikes, right? Because there was like these little challenge rooms that you can take to get like, I think, tokens or something, a talisman or something. And you have to navigate, right? Because you have like a dash, you know, you have to get through the spikes and everything. And it's just, I don't know, maybe because I was playing on Switch, maybe it's less responsive or something. But that kind of stopped me in my track.
I see.
Yeah.
It felt a little airy to you.
Yeah, it felt like, because if you play Hollow Knight, like with the pits, you have a way to deflect the spike.
Oh, that's right.
And like, you're kind of like deflecting it and kind of jumping, gaining momentum and stuff with it, or just moving along the spikes. And I kind of wish that had this here. Yeah. Because the pits just felt cheap. Mm-hmm. A lot of them, you didn't see them coming, you know? Mm-hmm. But I like the gameplay. I think once the enemies had that shield mechanic, that's when I was like, oh, I don't like that. You know, because if you didn't hit them enough, they would just regenerate their shield. Yeah. Right. And I don't think you had anything like that. Or, right? Okay.
No, there's no sort of shield mechanic for you as the player later on even.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just... and there's not even really a way to improve like the damage you're dealing.
Right.
You do get some abilities later on that like deal a bit more damage or will stun the enemy. So I felt like I was relying heavily on those because those shield enemies were annoying.
Yeah, so the gameplay left me wanting, right?
Yeah.
But the narrative, what I got into, I liked it. It pushed me forward, especially to the first boss, because like I was not really feeling it, but it pushed me to the first boss, and I did really enjoy the narrative. And I know we'll get into it later on.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's exactly what affected me most personally is the narrative. You could tell that this was the creator pouring their heart out via video game, Abubakar Salim, and I think he did a great job personalizing this game, putting his own personal experience of losing his father at a young age into this game, and giving some very touching moments with the main character. Really excited to share what happens in the game since you didn't complete the game fully. So, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah, we'll get to it.
So I think you're going to start us off talking about Alan Wake, right?
Yeah.
And his battle with Psychosis.
Yeah, we'll see at the end of it what I'm talking about, what I'm yapping about at the end, right?
Yeah.
Because I have a lot. There's so much background context to Alan Wake. Like, there was a lot of it. And I think I texted you about it, like, dude, there's a lot.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know if it wasn't explained. I don't think it was in depth in the game. I think you have to like read a novel or something or some background info on something, because I was
maybe
like,
those pages, the manuscript pages.
You know, did they do what they did with Final Fantasy VII and just like mobile game, movie, right? A novel on the side, right?
Yeah,
like, okay. So I'm gonna get into a lot about Alan Wake.
Okay,
like, context.
Well, I'm excited to hear it. I'm hoping it doesn't branch out into whatever happens in the second game.
I made sure
were you
I did.
able? Oh, okay, okay. I'm like, I don't know how easily that would have been.
Believe me, I was in the wiki, and once I saw Alan Wake 2, I was like, nope. All right, go back. Yeah, I don't want any spoilers on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Cool. Well, before we're already starting it, but before we dive too deep into it, got to give a little spoiler warning, fictional character warning. We're going to be talking about Alan Wake in Tales of Kenzera. For Alan Wake, as you just heard us say, we're going to try to keep it just to the first game as much as we can. With Tales, right now, there's only one game. So, and I don't think there's any other associated media. I mean, obviously, there's like developer interviews and stuff like that. But other than that, just going to be talking about the game. And then, like all of our discussions, these characters, fictional, have no intended resemblance to in any real person or place, thing, any noun. And we are not licensed therapists, so we're not making any sort of official diagnoses. Joe is an associate therapist who has experience seeing patients. I don't. But, these are still simply two informal discussions by grad students. And without further ado, I'd say go ahead and just dive into Alan Wake.
Yeah, let's talk about a little bit about what Alan Wake is like. So Alan Wake Remastered is a third-person survival horror game where we follow the story of Alan, a successful writer who struggles with Bright Falls' evil forces lying within the town of Bright Falls. The game is divided into different episodes, so you're going through like episode 1, 2, 3, and so on, right? Where we experience Alan realizing what is going on in the town while trying to save his wife, who the Dark Presence captured. So think of the Dark Presence like an evil force that is in the town. Eventually, Alan is able to fight the Taken by utilizing a flashlight, firearms, flares, and flashbangs. There's this constant theme of light versus dark that we see throughout the game. Like, it's just everywhere. So Alan can actually dispose the Taken without like lighting them up first with the flashlight or a source of light. And then once you do, they get stunned, right? And then you can take them out with, a gun or shotgun or hunting rifle that I don't even think we ever used or just used once. And it's actually interesting because the Taken are actually people from the town that are being possessed. So I thought they were just like ghosts or like figures that, the Dark Presence was spawning. They're actually people in the town, which is wild because why are there so many people in that town, right? Oh, you saw us. If you saw our streams, you saw us struggle. Yeah. There was many times that we're like, that is way too many enemies.
Yeah.
Right?
They kept on spawning.
I mean, it's explained throughout the game that the Dark Presence has possessed the people of Bright Falls. It is up to Alan to learn how to stop the Dark Presence, and we learn that Alan can actually influence what occurs in Bright Falls through his writing. Okay, so let's get to that character discussion. This is going to be a long one, I think. There's so much info. So, let's start with it. Alan Wake was born in 1977 to Linda Wake and an unknown father. Since he was born, he suffered from a rare condition that made him overly sensitive to light. When he was 7 years of age, he was deeply afraid of the dark, to the point that his mother eventually gave him like an old light called the clicker. And we see this in the game, right? It's like a little switch. She told Alan that the light switch had the power to banish the darkness, and it was a gift from Alan's father. So in his childhood, Alan befriended Barry Wheeler, who we see as the New York sounding guy. Right? They were actually friends at a young age, which that's never explained in the game.
No,
at all. I thought he was just like his talent manager or something.
Yeah,
right? Which he is.
He just kind of says old friend, maybe once or twice, but never like childhood friend.
Right. So the two of them would often get into trouble. Alan was typically the one causing this, while Barry would bail him out, which makes a lot of sense if you think about the game. Right? Barry is there to bail him out. The friendship would continue between Alan and Barry for years thereafter into their adult lives. In his teen years, Alan became a fan of Stephen King, who inspired him to become a writer when he grew up.
Yeah, there's a lot of like real world things that occur in this game as well. So that's kind of fun.
So before becoming a full-fledged writer, Alan moved to New York City and often took odd jobs, with one of them as a night watchman to help inspire the upcoming stories. During the night watchman job, he met Alice, an inspiring photographer who came to New York City who dreams of being an artist, and that's his wife, later on. Alan's first short story, Errand Boy, was published in Dark Vision magazine in 1996 when Alan was only 18 years old. This info is found within a book in the collector's edition or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, I see what we're doing here.
Yeah, right. I'm glad somebody put that up on the wiki.
Yeah, on the wiki, because we would have no idea.
Yeah.
Right? No way.
I don't even know how
I liked Alan Wake, but I didn't love it enough to like deep dive and find everything Alan Wake related.
Where could we even find a collector's edition right now? Yeah. Not sure.
Right. Maybe eBay.
Yeah.
Right? So this short story, The Errand Boy, contained many motifs which would become staples of Alan Wake's writing, including absent or mysterious father figures, which is like, Zane, right? The guy in the kind of like diver suit.
Yeah.
Right? And the battle between darkness and light. And dude, that's like Alan Wake 1 right there in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Right? Daddy issues, right? And darkness and light.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So 2 years later, in 1998, Alan got in trouble within the law for public drunkenness and battery. And we do hear about that, right? We hear like he has like some substance use going on in the past. And he avoided jail time. Sometime later, Barry helped Alan land a job as a writer for the cult television series Night Springs. So this is, the game, when you find the little TVs.
Yeah.
And they're like, in this episode.
Of
right?
Night Spring.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Damn.
See, like, we didn't know this, right?
Yeah.
So there was a lot to this. One of Alan's first scripts written to audition for the show depicted a secret organization called the Federal Bureau of Night Springs. Investigating a parallel dimension, Alan wrote several episodes of the show, and it ultimately kicked off his larger writing career. Right, so there's the context for that. Because it's like, what is this show? Why are we even paying attention to it? Now it makes sense.
Right.
It's Alan's work.
Okay. That's really cool that it starts coming up. It just seems like everything in Bright Falls is truly influenced by him and his previous writing.
Mm-hmm. And we'll get to that. Get to that. So let's see. Alan's name became internationally known when he wrote the first installment of Alex Casey, a crime thriller novel series, and we hear about this in the game. He also wrote 5 more Alex Casey books in the following 7 years, which are all bestsellers. Barry became Alan's literary agent, so his talent agent essentially, right? And remember, these guys are friends. Alan also became known for his easily annoyed, complaining nature and at times violent personality, which on multiple occasions resulted in altercations with the paparazzi. So he assaulted a man by the name of Peter Villedison in January 13, 2006, when he pushed his camera into his eye. Charges were filed, but Alan avoided jail time for it. Alan also has a history of heavy drinking, substance abuse. Mm-hmm. So I heard you laugh a little, with the description of Alan. What do you think about that?
Why is this so on point? It does not surprise me the least bit that he has these violent tendencies, easily annoyed, because he's always complaining about everything, or just like, you're in this world and now you're like trying to find your wife and stuff, but it's very whiny the way he's
not likable.
No, he's so annoying.
But that's what I like about him.
Yeah.
He's like, bro, I'm tired. Like, whatever, right? He's kind of just complaining the whole time, but he gets it done.
Yeah, that's true.
But,
like, at least he saw it through and he rescued everyone, maybe.
We'll see. We'll see in 2, right? Whenever we get to that.
Yeah.
So Alan eventually marries Alice, who was a talented photographer he met in New York City. Alan was met with a sudden and immense strain of writer's block. So this is when, like, right before the game, right? He's like, we see that, he's struggling, he's unable to write a word for years, supposedly. So worrying for her husband, Alice took a book on troubled artists, The Creator's Dilemma, written by a therapist named Dr. Emil Hartman, which we do see in the game.
Oh, right.
Wanting to help Alan recover from his writer's block, Alice took him on a vacation to Bright Falls. So that's like the context of why they're in Bright Falls, right? But she doesn't tell him, right? We're here so you can get services, right? He finds out through her, and I think he gets upset. It's Alan. Of course he'll get upset. While on his way to Bright Falls, Alan had a vivid nightmare of fighting against the shadowy possessed individual, an ethereal figure teaching him how to fight by using light to burn away the shadows on the taken's bodies, right? That night when they arrive, Alice revealed to Alan the intent of the trip, which is presenting him with a typewriter and, just write Alan, right? Alan was upset, stormed off. Moments later, Alice was kidnapped by an unseen force and dragged into the waters of the lake. Alan dove in after her and blacked out. Waking up a week later in crashed car miles from the lake with no recollection of how he'd arrived there or what happened to Alice after she had disappeared into the lake. So this force that takes Alice is the dark presence. And that's the presence that is, residing in Bright Falls. So what are the Taken? Because you've heard us talk about a little bit about the Taken. So the Taken are the remnants of people fully possessed by the Dark Presence. They are essentially mindless puppets that exist only to fight and serve the Dark Presence. They cannot be saved and must be avoided or killed. And the Dark Presence is a malevolent, supernatural, and conscious force within the dark place underneath Cauldron Lake, which is where we show up, right? At the beginning of the game. It's like, this little like hut, kind of like cabin in the woods type thing, but it's on a lake, right? Yeah. This is Cauldron Lake, and this is where the Dark Presence resides. And it's the main antagonist of Alan Wake, the game, and pursues Alan as he searches for Alice, and the Dark Presence is responsible for the nightmares and otherworldly happenings in Bright Falls. So it's not only affecting Alan, but like the whole town. Right. And so I looked on the wiki, and the Dark Presence has like rules. The Dark Presence, the Dark Presence cannot create anything on its own. It must use someone else to affect reality. Specifically, it must have an artist to create the changes through its medium. The artist's choice also binds it, and it can manipulate and influence the artist. Once an artist taps into the lake's power, it is their power to control. For example, it cannot stop an artist from using their art to create a weapon against it. So we see that, right? Alan gets the clicker, right? And he's like, okay, how can I defeat the darkness, the Dark Presence, right? And he's writing, right? He's writing how to get out of it, how to solve this issue, right? So it's like the Dark Presence got him here, used his, his mind and whatever to spawn all of this, the Taken and whatnot. But the rule is like, hey, you as the artist can fix it, right?
Oh, okay.
And we see throughout the DLC, I think it's called The Signal. It's like episode 1 or 2, right? Mm-hmm. In The Signal, which is the DLC for Alan Wake Remastered, it depicts Alan as trapped within himself. Instead of fighting the darkness or his book, he is now fighting himself as his projections try to kill him within his mind. So in the stream, right, when we were playing, there was an Alan on TV. Right?
Yeah.
And it was like, the Taken will get you, right? They're overwhelming Alan with numbers, right? There's like a line like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So he's fighting himself. And at the end of The Signal, Alan attacks himself. The TV screams, "It is my brain," revealing to us that Alan is actually trapped in the cabin and having a nightmare on the floor. That nightmare being The Signal, which is what we played through, right? It is speculated that Alan's nightmare was fueled by the Dark Presence, which drove him insane as he reread the Departure manuscript, which is the manuscript he's working on in the game.
Right.
And he's trying to find a loophole he can use to escape. And that's why we find like manuscript pages, right? Okay. It's the Departure. We're collecting it, right? And Alan gets to the point where like, okay, how can I write out of this, right? Mm-hmm. And I know that we stopped reading them like maybe like less than halfway through the game, right? Because it's a lot of text, right?
Yeah.
But maybe it's actually worth to go back in and read them all, or find like a document or something that has them all.
Yeah, because I think you have to play through hard to fully unlock them all, and I do not want to play that game again. So that was a lot of info. This is Alan Wake, right? This is all info like we might have known. Right? A little bit, but a lot of this stuff, I was just like, whoa, okay, here's the context. Brand new. I know. Wow. Okay. Thank you for shedding some light on some of these things that like happened before the events of the game that we had no idea about.
Yeah, that's what we do. We shed the light, right?
Yeah. We're fighting our inner Taken.
But yeah, I mean, so that's all the info I have for Alan Wake. And what I wanted to talk about today is Psychosis, because we were both like, is this all going on in Alan's head? Right. Is he manifesting this stuff, or what's going on here? So I wanted to deep dive into Psychosis. And so I found an article on PubMed by Arciniegas 2015. So we'll talk a little bit about psychosis. So what is psychosis? Psychosis is a common and functionally disruptive symptom of many psychiatric, neurodevelopment, neurological, or neurologic and medical conditions. So what psychosis is it's the defining feature of schizophrenia spectrum disorder, a common but variable feature of mood and substance use disorders, and a relatively common feature of many developmental, acquired, and degenerative neurologic conditions. It's like you can find it in, schizophrenia, right? Substance use disorder. But what is psychosis? So both the APA and the World Health Organization define psychosis narrowly by requiring the presence of hallucinations without insight into their pathological nature. So hallucinations that we're not too sure why they're happening. Maybe the person who's experiencing them doesn't know why, right? Or what the reason is. We also have delusions, or both hallucinations without insight and delusions. Okay. And both of these current diagnostic classification systems, impaired reality testing remains central. So their reality is not going to be like, yours or ours.
Right.
And so let's go in and define what delusions are, right? Because we hear hallucinations and delusions, and there's a misconception that you can replace them with each other, right? But actually, delusions are fixed false belief. These are evident by delusional beliefs are ones that are ideas that, might be like, I'll give you an example. It's like, an alien took my organs out and put them back into my body and now they're scarred.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
They're like these false beliefs, right? As for hallucinations, the hallucinations are affecting your five senses, right? Or your senses, whatever sense, right? Visual, auditory, right? So hallucinations are perceptions, and they're evident of impaired realities. When the individual is actually experiencing them, they're unable to recognize the hallucinatory nature of such experiences. So an example would be like, do you see that clown right there next to us?
Uh-huh.
Right?
Yeah.
And you're like, no, right? But I see it. He's sitting right there. Right? He's looking at me. That's what a hallucination would look like, right? Because I can see it.
So there were a lot of those happening, Alan.
Yeah. So that's why we were like, yeah, what's going on with Alan? Is he okay? Right?
Yeah.
Also, hallucinations involve hearing voices, conversing with one another, offering running commentary on one's actions and thought echoes. Hallucinations in which the patient hears their thoughts spoken aloud. These are considered first-rank symptoms of schizophrenia. So ordinary delusions, let's go back to delusions, derive from a misinterpretation of everyday experiences, as such are understandable but not accepted by other members of the person's culture or subculture. For example, a patient who believes that an unknown group of conspirators is diverting his savings to a terrorist group, despite being presented with evidence to the contrary, has an ordinary delusion. So essentially, like, hey, someone's stealing from me and giving it to a terrorist group.
Yeah.
Right. But they're like, you call the bank and they're like, no one's transferring anything out, but that's my belief. That's a delusion.
Yeah. There's a belief, and no matter how much evidence you might present, it like can't shake that belief.
Right. And then we have the bizarre ones, which bizarre delusions involve phenomena that are physically impossible for most people in that person's culture that would regard as entirely implausible. So an example would be I think I mentioned this earlier. A stranger removes one's internal organs, replace them with another person's organs without leaving any wounds or scars. It's a bizarre delusion. And there's multiple types of delusions as well. So we have persecutory, which is the fixed false belief that one is being harmed or that such harm is impending and that the perpetrators are harming them or causing it intentionally. Common examples include the belief that one is being followed, tricked on, spied on, poisoned, drugged. I can go on. Right.
Yeah.
So believing that, someone is conspiring against you. We have delusions of grandeur, grandiose, insightless and unshakable convictions that one possesses special powers, talents, knowledges, or abilities. Maybe I considered famous in our own eyes, right? Or a special relationship to a famous person or deity. So it's like those people that are like, have never met an actor, right? They're like, oh, he's my best friend.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He like, we call each other each day. Right. And it's like,
my uncle's the CEO of Nintendo.
Right. My uncle works in Nintendo, and he told me that the Nintendo Switch 2 is launching tomorrow. Right.
You could find Mew underneath the truck.
But you actually believe it.
Yeah.
Right? That's the thing. Right. Religious ones, which, these are delusions with religious content, especially beliefs that one is God or an angel, a devil, the son of the daughter of God, a saint, that kind of stuff. We have referential delusions, which are fixed false beliefs that remarks, objects, events, or other phenomena as directed at or about oneself. So like, let's say you see like that oil barrel, right? The ones that fly to you when you're playing Alan Wake, right? It's like, those oil barrels are always out to get me.
Oh,
right.
Wow. Okay. Those are referential hallucinations.
Yeah. So we
delusions.
have thought control, delusion, fixed false belief that one's thoughts, feelings, or behaviors are being controlled by an external force, person, or group. We have thought insertion, which is a delusion that thoughts are being inserted into one's mind. We have delusional perception, which is linking a normal perception to a bizarre conclusion. What is this? Seeing the sunrise signifies to somebody that he is the Messiah, or she is the Messiah, or they're the Messiah. Right? Connecting things that, shouldn't, like, don't
There's
actually
no
have
connection.
a connection.
Yeah.
Like it's like if I woke up today, stubbed my toe, and was like, well, my car's gonna explode today, and it's not gonna be a good day.
Jeez.
It's like, well, how did you get there?
Yeah. Talk about jumping into conclusions there.
Yeah. Okay. And then there were more in this article, but
I bet.
Yeah. But let's stop it at a parasitosis, which is, I was like, what is this? And it's a fixed false belief that one is infested with insects, bacteria, mites, lice, fleas, spiders, worms, or other organisms.
Parasitosis. What a word.
Yeah. I was like, yo, this sounds interesting. I'm like, I hope no one has to deal with that because that sounds terrible though.
I know. Oh man. I mean, it feels like you get a minor version of this whenever you're like outside and someone says that they're getting bit by mosquitoes or by some sort of bug. And then, I don't know, I start feeling a little itchy too. And I'm like, oh shit. I don't know.
Yeah. So maybe some parasitosis.
Yeah. Right? I guess so.
So let's talk a little bit about what a primary psychotic disorder is. So a subset of the population with genetic, epigenetic, and developmental risk factors may, with sufficient exposure to risk-modifying social and environmental factors, be prone to developing persistent psychotic symptoms. Okay, let's break that down, right? So genetics, right? You might have genetics that are like you're predisposed to schizophrenia, or on top of social and environmental factors, maybe stress, whatever's going on, trauma, right, might actually trigger that within an individual. Right. And psychosis can occur in some people with bipolar disorder during manic or depressive episodes, as well as some individuals during a major depressive disorder episode as well. So this is just not only schizophrenia, right, that you'll experience psychosis. Not everyone who's depressed or has bipolar is gonna, experience psychosis, but it could happen. And psychotic symptoms, which are hallucinations, may develop during either intoxication or withdrawal from substances. So, like, if someone's drinking too much, right, or maybe they took a, some certain drug, you can like actually hallucinate, right? Yeah. And those are those psychotic symptoms as well. Yeah. So with the main, essentially the main players of what schizophrenia, psychotic disorder are, I have a couple here. We have schizotypal personality disorder, which is at the mild end of schizophrenia spectrum disorder. Schizotypal disorder is characterized by social and interpersonal deficits that reduce the capacity for and produce marked discomfort with close relationships. The deficits are often accompanied by unusual perceptions, illusions, cognitive distortions, ideas of reference, suspiciousness, paranoia, odd beliefs, magical thinking, similar to but less than those experienced by schizophrenia. Right. So this has to do more with like interpersonal relationships. Yeah. So what that might look like is like, you met someone a week ago, right? And you're like, oh, we're best friends now. He's my best friend. He knows everything about me now, right? And in reality, it's like, no, we just, went to go watch baseball. Yeah. And that was it.
What are you trying to say?
Yeah. So it's like that, right? Those beliefs, those thoughts, hallucinations, whatnot. We have schizophreniform, which is a disorder that represents a point on the spectrum between brief psychotic and schizophrenia. Analogous to changes made to the criteria for schizophrenia, the condition is defined by the presence of two or more psychotic and related symptoms: delusions, hallucinations, disorganized speech, formal thought disorder, abnormal psychomotor behavior, grossly disorganized or catatonic behavior, and negative symptoms. At least one of which may be delusions, hallucinations, lasting at least 1 month, but less than 6 months. And a lot of disorders, or some of the disorders in the DSM-5, they have that timeline, right? With like PTSD, right? There's like brief stress disorder or something like that. That's 30 days, right? Oh. After 30 days, you can now diagnose with PTSD, right? So schizophreniform it's on the lower end of us because schizophrenia is next, and it's the same thing. So I won't repeat it, right? It's the catatonic thoughts, hallucinations, disorganized speech, but this has been present for at least 6 months, so more than a month, right? And so that's another criteria for schizophrenia.
I see.
So it's the time allotted.
Yeah, I'm curious to know like the percentage of schizophreniform disorder diagnoses compared to schizophrenia. How often is schizophreniform really used in the diagnosis?
Right.
And how many of those who are diagnosed with that will like go on to be diagnosed with schizophrenia like after that 6 month window, if that occurs? But we can save that for another pod.
Maybe. Yeah, because it definitely wasn't in this article. And the last one I have here for the primary psychotic disorders is a schizoaffective disorder, which requires an uninterrupted period of illness during which a major mood episode occurs concurrently with the disturbance of schizophrenia, which is delusions, hallucinations, all that stuff that I mentioned. But this time you have it during a mood episode, whether it's manic or depressive, right? So what makes it this different are the mood episodes. And it says here, it's like over the lifetime of the illness, delusions or hallucinations also must occur for at least 2 weeks in the absence of either a manic or depressive episode. So after that episode, these schizophrenic symptoms are still there. So the requirement of a 2-week or longer episode of psychosis in the absence of mood symptoms distinguishes schizoaffective disorder from bipolar, depressive, anything else. It's got to be that 2-week, right, where you're experiencing psychosis, and there's no mood episode going on. And then we're going to move on to secondary psychotic disorders. And this is more like neurocognitive disorders, which I know we touched upon in our program, but it was like brief. These are hallucinations or delusions that are manifesting from other things like Alzheimer's, right? Parkinson's, frontotemporal lobal degeneration, Huntington disease, prion disease, all this stuff that can also happen. And as for treatment, we have systemic reviews and meta-analysis demonstrate that typical first-generation and atypical antipsychotics are similar with respect to their beneficial effects. So for these type of psychotic disorders, medication is probably best. Therapy is good as well, but I remember having a professor who was like, therapy alone will not be enough for somebody with a psychotic disorder. Right? There has to be some medication going on as well.
That makes a lot of sense because it feels like it is relatively heavily like neurotransmitter influenced rather than like a mood based thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Which I know could be neurotransmitter as well, but there's some additional like brain stimulation that's occurring since they might be experiencing hallucinations and stuff like that. So to use something that can affect those neurotransmitters, I could see why therapy alone wouldn't be beneficial.
Right. So we have medication. We also have transcranial magnetic stimulation, which is like they place magnets on your head and they essentially shock you, right? And it's non-invasive, I believe, and it doesn't really hurt you. It's not like they're like probing you or anything, right? It says an electrical pulse generator or stimulator is connected to a magnetic coil connected to the scalp, right?
Interesting.
And this does not appear to be effective treatment for other symptoms of schizophrenia.
So then it's treating.
It's treatment for the hallucinations.
Oh, okay, yeah. I see now.
Yeah,
my bad.
and any like I know TMS is also used for like stubborn depression, and when I mean stubborn depression, it's called refractory depression, which is medication's not working, therapy's not working. Hey, let's try this.
Oh, right? Okay, yeah.
Stimulate the brain, right?
Yeah, I've definitely heard of this before in context of depression, when no other medication or a treatment is working.
Right. And then we have the therapy. This can be patient and family education. What this means is psychoeducation, right? We're educating the patient, the client, and their family. What's happening to this person. What can you expect? What does this all mean? What are the hallucinations, delusions, right? Explain that. CBT therapies, right? Of course, that's insurance companies love that, right? So of course that's going to be in this article. Community treatment, social skills training, and supported employment. We have additional non-pharmacological interventions that may reduce contributors to psychotic symptoms, like caregiver and family support, right? Things like that. It's very basic. It sounds like even going through this, it's like there's not much. There's like medication, we have stimulation, and here are a couple of things that, maybe a CBT here and there. Like there needs to be more research done, essentially.
Yeah.
Right, on how we can help people with psychotic disorders, because I was going through this and I was like, this is very short. And this was a 2015 study, and it seems like they went through meta-analysis and like other studies as well. And it's like, this is all they found. That's wild.
Yeah, I think circling back to just like trying to treat like what is going on in the brain. It sounds like there's not too many options other than medication, and then within the medication world, you're just like switching between different medications.
It's a guessing game.
If one works, because there is no sort of like catch-all medication that's been effective for everyone. It like depends on the individual as to whether that medication is going to work or not, or be effective. So yeah, it's important to find one that works for the patient, the client, or for yourself.
Right. And that's the thing, right? It's not a one-fit-all type model, even with therapy. Right. So yeah, it just shows that there's a lot of research to be made and looked at. Right? We still don't know a lot about the brain, essentially. But let's get back to Alan Wake. So Psychosis and Alan Wake. So initially I was like, bro, Alan Wake, yeah, you got some type of schizophreniform or schizophrenia going on, right? And yeah, so let's get into it. Throughout the game, we witness Alan experience hallucinations and delusions. The Taken, which is the town, the evil presence there, right, in Bright Falls, right, that they're real, right? And I was like, okay, if they weren't real and the whole town could not experience that, I was like, easy.
Yeah,
right?
If there was any sort of dialogue line of like, what are you talking about, Alan? And it would be like, oh, okay, Psychosis.
Yeah, and at first people are like, "Nah, you're tripping." Right?
Yeah.
But then like the whole town's engulfed in the dark presence and the Taken, and it's like, okay, you can't deny that anymore.
Right.
Right. So the hallucinations that we see, they're actually tangible. Like everyone else can see them.
Yeah.
Right? And Alan can actually die from them. These are actually happening. There's the distinction that needs to be made, right? Alan is not the only one dealing with them. However, we see that Alan has struggled and struggles with substance use.
Yep.
Right? Which these can induce hallucinations, delusions as well. Right? So could this be a substance use, type of psychosis?
Good
but
question.
We know it's not because everyone else sees it, right? But there's a part in episode 2 called The Writer, right? This is a DLC in Alan Wake, where we see Alan interact with like a cognitive echo of Barry and like the old gods of Asgard as well.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, is that really them, or is that like, because they're like ethereal, right? They're like see-through.
Right.
And I'm like, Alan, what do you do? Like, what is going on? Right? And that's where I'm like, but I don't think anyone else can see them. Or I don't think there's anyone next to Alan that can explain why Barry is like transcending or something. Right?
Yeah.
Or like he's like, you can see through him.
Didn't it say that? Was it both DLCs or just episode 1 that took place in a nightmare? Or
I think I'll be honest, I think, did we play through it? We played through episode 1.
Yeah, we
right?
did.
And I remember that's the TV boss, right? At the end.
Oh man, yeah, that was annoying.
Then that was rough.
Yeah.
Right. And I think Barry was there too. So there's like this echo of Barry, right? Because it's not really him. It's in Alan's mind.
It's been his conscious this whole time. He's been there to help support him. It's interesting for his brain to turn that into a boss.
Yeah, exactly. It turns it into a boss. And I think if it was just like, oh, he's just talking to Barry, okay. Yeah. But he actually fights this like echo or whatever, right, of Barry. Like there's a boss fight, right? Like we're actually shooting Barry, but it's not Barry.
It seems like it also, like Barry in that form has some sort of negative self-talk of Alan Wake. Like if this was just Alan's thoughts that created this version of Barry, then, there's a lot of negative self-talk there. I guess Alan's personality, to me, doesn't really invite a lot of negative self-talk into it. So it seems out of place to see for him to create this like physical manifestation of like a negative thing in his head about himself. So yeah, it is just confusing. I guess this is me just saying like, I don't know what Barry's doing there.
Yeah.
Or how he got there.
So that's where I'm like, okay, maybe there is some, let's hit him with the provisional diagnosis of schizophreniform.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like, we're not sure if Alan had these hallucinations, delusions before he came to Bright Falls.
Right.
But I know he's not in Bright Falls for long. He's there for like a week, 2 weeks maybe, as this is going on.
Yeah. Right? It was a pretty short period of time.
Yeah, it's not 6 months, But again, and then the delusion of the clicker, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, I understand his mom gave him the clicker as like a, device of like, this will scare the darkness away, right? But like, he actually believes it, right? And there's a point where I saw on the wiki where Alan gives the clicker to Alice, his wife. And it's like, hey, this has the power to repel the darkness. And Alice knows it doesn't, right? But Alan does believe it. Again, I think that would categorize as a delusion, right?
Yeah.
And so we'll see. I don't want to officially like kind of diagnose Alan because we haven't seen 2. What does Alan Wake 2 have in store?
Yeah, and there's also Control, which is like in the Alan Wake universe, and
I kept seeing it in the wiki as well.
Yeah, there's a lot that can be explained from playing Control. Maybe we're definitely not going to play it before Alan Wake 2. I'll tell you that because I really want to play Alan Wake 2.
Yeah.
But in Control, there's a whole... It's essentially, the bureau that he made up
of Night Springs?
Yeah. It's kind of that, but for the world.
Yeah, I saw a mention of that in the wiki.
I think it's just called the Bureau in that game. And you play as someone who works for the Bureau in Control. So you investigate a lot of like objects that exhibit paranormal activity that could also like maybe grant you some sort of psychic powers and stuff like that. And it's been a while since I played Control. I believe there is some hints of Alan Wake within Control.
Okay.
And I also hadn't played Alan Wake when I played Control before. So maybe now if I had gone back to play him, I could see what those tie-ins are. But there's a good chance a lot of this stuff that's happening to Alan is real.
Yeah, pretty much. That's why I was like, I don't even want to like diagnose him because a lot of this stuff is happening. Sure, I feel like the clicker delusion. I'm like, kind of reaching, right? It's kind of, it's an item that he used for safety, like But yeah, we'll see in Alan Wake 2, right? Mm-hmm. We'll see in Alan Wake 2. But yeah, that is my time with Alan Wake. I mean, any thoughts? Any Anything else?
I'm really glad that we played this game.
Yeah, me too.
Because just seeing like all of the information you dug up regarding the psychoses and all this other stuff, good stuff, it was really insightful. And I'm glad that playing this game inspired the discussion. And now we get to play a game that I've been really excited for since last year, since it first came out, but never really had the time or a reason to play it. And now
we do.
Now we do. And it's going to be two minds looking at it.
But yeah, I mean, I gotta say, I really enjoyed Alan Wake, and this gave me the motivation to actually get into the Silent Hill game.
No shit, really?
Because I'm like, okay, Alan Wake Remastered, yeah, it's a little spooky at times, right? Mm-hmm. But I was like, we played through most of it. I think I can handle Silent Hill 2 and 3, and that's when I played it out in Texas during my break.
Right.
I played it with a friend. We were just switching off the controller as we do here.
Yeah.
And that was a good time. And I was like, you know what?
It was way more horror, though.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah.
But I was like, horror games are cool. They're pretty cool. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I appreciate Alan Wake for that.
I'm like, what was because I feel like, well, we played Dead Space Remake, but like, were you a horror game fan prior to a lot of this stuff?
I like horror games, but I don't watch other people play them.
Oh, that's right.
They're too scary for me. Yeah. Right. But then I was like, we went through Alan Wake. We
went through Silent Hill, the short message.
Yeah, the short message, which was
had some jump scares.
Yeah, that was a rough ride.
Yeah. I was rewatching our playthrough because I was like trying to pull some stuff out of it. And I think we were stuck at that final area for at least 20 minutes.
Yeah.
For that final chase.
Because you're getting chased and I'm like, all right, man, we got to end the stream soon. So let's look this up.
Yeah.
Right. Because I'm like, there's got to be a way that we could just speed this up. And yeah.
We needed it. No, I'm glad you did. Well, thank you again for doing the deep dive on the Alan Wake. Cool. I guess I'll tell you all about Tales of Kenzera Zao.
Let's go.
So before I get too deep into it, just want to give a trigger warning here. I'm going to talk a lot about these topics of death of like a parent, child, loved ones, because the game deals heavily with that. That's the basis of the game, is dealing with death and learning how to cope with the loss of a parent, I guess is the basis of Zao's journey in the game. But you encounter many other people who have lost loved ones. So I'm going to go ahead and give a little description about the game. So Tales of Kenzera Zao is a side-scrolling Metroidvania game that has you venture through the beautiful world of Kenzera as you attempt to help 3 angered great spirits in exchange for your father's soul. You play as Zao, a young adult shaman who recently lost his father, who was another shaman, as he travels through various parts of Kenzera. Zao teams up with the god of death, named Kalunga, during their hunt for these great spirits. Zao and Kalunga meet several interesting characters along the way, each with their own connection to the great spirits. And throughout the journey, Zao and Kalunga use Zao's shaman powers to help resolve their own conflicts with death. After several ups and downs between the relationship, Zao and Kalunga successfully pacify the 3 great spirits, and Zao requests Kalunga, the god of death, to uphold his end of the bargain in bringing back his father's spirit. And that's at the end of the game. Now, for my discussion with Tales of Kenzera, I feel like it's going to be mostly a summary of a lot of the majority of the narrative plots of this game, but through Zao's journey, I feel like gives a lot of in-depth examples of grief and loss or of coping with grief and loss. And it just really moved me to see Zao's reactions and how he was dealing with a lot of stuff. And I just wanted to talk about it because I don't know anyone else who really played this game. I don't know if you would have if I didn't like tell you that I wanted to play this game.
Yeah.
So I would love to tell everyone about it, and that's what I'm going to do here. So, like I said, you play as Zao. You're with Kalunga, the god of death, and you're going to find these 3 great spirits, pacify them in exchange for your father. He calls him his Baba, for your Baba's soul. So one of Zao's first duties as a shaman is to assist the great spirit of the sky named Impundulu, and also, please forgive me if I butcher these, I believe, traditionally Swahili names. I have no experience speaking the language. I'm going to do my best to try and pronounce them as best as I can here, but yeah, I apologize. So, on our way to assist Impundulu, we meet Liana, who is a young spirit caller who has a connection to Impundulu. She says they used to play together, but then the storm grew and caused like a giant flood, I believe, and like it caused the city to have to empty out. And now Liana's been looking for Impundulu, and they no longer play anymore. But we venture through the mountains and work our way up to the top where Impundulu is waiting for us. And there, on the way up to the top of the mountain, we chat with Liana. And before we fight Impundulu, it is revealed that she is actually Liana's mother. Impundulu is holding on to the past, unable to let go and cross over. So she needs to allow Liana to inherit the responsibilities as the new ruler of the skies, but she is holding on to that, and she doesn't want to put that burden on her daughter. And just as a quick side note, it feels like a lot of these boss fights in the game are, symbolic, because like you're a shaman and you're fighting the boss as if they're attacking you, but it feels more like a battle of the emotions and of whatever conflict is arising. So you're really fighting them and kind of like doing therapy with them, where you're trying to resolve that conflict and fight them in allowing them to open up to whatever it is that you have to offer them, so that they can resolve whatever issue that's keeping them there, and then their spirit can pass. So after beating Impundulu and helping her cross into the afterlife, Zhao reflects on his own situation of not wanting to let his Baba go, and how he also had to inherit his father's own responsibilities. So he wasn't expecting his father to die so suddenly, and now all of a sudden he's a shaman that Kenzera needs. I'm guessing there's only one shaman in this world. I didn't see any sort of evidence to show that there were multiple shamans. As far as I know, it's just Zhao. So he now has this responsibility, just like Liana now has the responsibility to be the ruler of the sky and the spirit of the sky. So with Impundulu, we see this loss of a parent and how that affects the child. And now I'm going to integrate some of the articles I read about different types of loss, whether it's parental loss or child loss. And several articles I found were detailing the importance of the mental health of the child following a parental death. And I say child less than adult age, so like less than 18, because children in particular are quite susceptible to the death of a parent, even if there is still a surviving caretaker. And there's shown to be like higher rates of mental health issues, of other disorder diagnoses, and there's even higher mortality rates for children who have lost a parent. And I thought that was pretty stunning. So children, more so than adults who've lost a parent, need a bit better care and most likely therapy to help process this loss, because it's a heavy thing to lose someone who is caring for you and who's supposed to show you kind of how to navigate life. So after Impundulu, Zhao and Kalunga continue on to the next great spirit, who resides in the forest. Once they make their way there, they encounter Sabulana, an old friend of Zhao's, who also knew Zhao's Baba. So she instantly recognizes Zhao's shaman mask as previously belonging to Baba and realizes that must mean that Baba is dead. So unfortunately, Sabulana informs us that she is also sick and dying. And she wants Zhao to save the forest, which is, at this point in the game, diseased. Like the forest itself is like... swamp. Yeah, it's like decaying. It's diseased and decaying because she, as the watcher of the forest, she's dying. She is sick and she's not able to take care of it. So she mentions that there is a potion that can be brewed out of the various herbs found within this forest. And if we get to them to her, it might actually cure her. So shortly after leaving to find the herbs, Kalunga confesses that maybe Zhao should not waste time searching for these herbs, and instead should just spend the remaining moments of Sabulana's life together, instead of leaving her to try and find this cure. Zhao eventually becomes frustrated with Kalunga's remarks, believing that Kalunga would rather do nothing than save his friend. And then Zhao continues to press the matter by saying that Kalunga does not care about humans and only sees them as inconveniences. So Kalunga is kind of rightfully becoming a bit defensive at this, but he kind of backs down. He sees that Zhao is like really frustrated, angry, and upset. Zhao just lost his Baba, and now he might lose his own friend. So he kind of quiets down and just lets Zhao talk his shit and get it out of his system. But this affected Zhao so greatly because he felt helplessness in his Baba's situation. He couldn't help his dad. I think he got sick pretty suddenly. And I think they knew he was going to die soon, but it was still like the sickness came on quickly to the point where he didn't have a lot of time left with him. And he sees this opportunity to actually prevent someone else's death. So he wants to do whatever he can to prevent that death. And he sees Kalunga as like a threat to that. And that's why he's like becoming hostile with Kalunga. But fortunately, Zhao's frustration turns into grief when he returns to Sabulana with the ingredients, gives her the potion, but is unable to save her because she technically died before any of this actually occurred.
Oh, really?
So this was actually the angered great spirit of the forest, Kikiyaon, who was playing a trick on Zhao. I'm not 100% sure why, but wanted to get him away. And the great spirit was physically presenting as his sick friend who had already died. Symbolically, I interpreted this as Sabulona had died some time ago when she was probably first hit with the disease. And, this might be a bit iffy, but she probably came to terms with her own death and wanted to send Zhao away so that he would not see her die. And the reason I say this is iffy, because in the game they explain it as Kikiyaon was pretending to be Sabulona, but feels like symbolically and narratively, it was still actually her just wanting Zhao to not watch her die and maybe give Zhao a purpose. So, when Sabulana turns into Kikiyaon, we see that boss kind of like a manifestation of Zhao's frustration and being able to help, and kind of feeds off of that, and that turns into the boss fight. I remember this boss fight being pretty challenging too.
You're telling me it was frustrating, right?
Yeah, it might have been this third one that was the most frustrating, but I remember this one, there was just a certain mechanic that was just like not intuitive at all that I didn't realize, and there was some very like annoying off-screen things that would just come out of nowhere. There was like this fog of death, I guess, that would swarm part of the battlefield, and you would have to run away from it. And there was a safe path, but you wouldn't be 100% sure which path that was. There were multiple ways to take. Yeah, and it took me some attempts to realize that there were some like lights that were guiding the way, but even that wasn't too apparent. So,
okay.
Yeah. Anyways, you beat the boss, and the boss was like, I think you had to strike the heart of the forest. Kikiyaon was like sending in all this like poisonous clouds and stuff, but you had to attack the heart of the forest in order to beat the boss. So that was kind of cool, symbolically. Okay. After helping out and pacifying Kikiyaon, Zhao and Kulunga then make their way to the third and final great spirit of the volcano, which resides in Mount Ichshoka. Zhao feels a special connection to the area of Ichshoka since his mother was actually from there. But she left Zhao and Baba when Zhao was just a child to return to Ichshoka. Zhao took a while to let go of his mother, but he realized there was no reason to hold on to that pain. But Baba did struggle to get over the mom leaving them for the world. I believe there was some dialogue that said something about how both Zhao and the Baba realized that this wasn't the place for her. I don't know where they lived, but it wasn't in Mount Ichshoka. So I think once Zhao turned into a not like infant, maybe a little older than a toddler, she then left them to go back to her home world. So close to Mount Ichshoka, Zhao and Kulunga run into Bomani, who is an older man who is waiting for his son to return. His son went to do the Enduring Rite, which is a ceremony to ask a favor from the gods, and this occurs deep within the volcano. It seemed to me that there was some bad blood, maybe a fight that occurred between Bomani and his son, and that is why he wanted to get his son back. But I think his son went there he needed a favor from the gods in order to maybe like save the village. I forget the specifics, but Bomani was like, don't do it, it's too dangerous. But his son didn't listen. So during the ascent to the volcano, we find Bomani's son's shattered mask, abandoned spear, and a necklace on top of a stick and a pile of rocks. So kind of looks like a gravesite. This does not bode well, and seems like something might have happened to the son since his belongings are just like kind of scattered together in this area. But we eventually reach the top and then descend into the volcano, only to be met with the great spirit of mankind, Gagorib. Zhao mentions that they are looking for the son of Bomani, but this angers Gagorib. Zhao continues by saying that within the child bears the burden of mankind, and the father wants to release this burden. And this quote like really stood out to me because it felt like the wisest thing Zhao had said at that moment, but it was still a bit of like a challenge to decipher because I wasn't sure exactly how to interpret it. I initially interpreted the quote as every child is going to grow up to support mankind in some way, that all of mankind relies on these children to contribute to society as adults in a way that's going to help support the society. But I'm not too sure what was meant by the father saying he wishes to release that burden from the child. Maybe it could be that the father wanted to shield the child from the burden of having to support society. I mean, that's why he didn't want his child
taking that burden from the child, meaning like, the dad's going to take care of it, right? So the child can just live their life.
Yeah, that's what I thought it might be saying. But in this case with Bomani, he's no longer going to be able to support him since his son is dead and is, in fact, this raging spirit now named Gogorib.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it seems like within the game, there's like the death of a person who is like, these bosses are deaths of people who have some sort of spiritual connection to nature and to the world. And then I think because their deaths aren't clean, they're not expected, and there's like some negative conflict that caused the death, then it's kind of like their spirit remains.
That's
until
it's like unfinished business.
Exactly. Yeah. During the fight, Gogorib exclaims that no father would want this kind of son. And, you know, maybe this comes from the shame that he felt being Bomani's child. Maybe they didn't always have the same outlook on life and fought. And now maybe he died with regret. Not too sure also what was meant by that.
It's not explained.
No. Yeah. No. There was actually a decent amount of like index text. So if you like encountered something for the first time, or once you beat a boss or stuff like that, it fills out like your index with a little bit more information about the person. I remember like reading most of them. I don't know. There very well could be some stuff that I missed from there, but tried my best like writing everything down here. During the fight, it eventually leads back out from the depth of the volcano into the surface because Zhao is being chased by Gogorib. And once he like emerges from the surface, I think he like, there's like some crack in the wall and Zhao blows through it. And then Zhao is outside the mountain and Gogorib is chasing him. But I forgot exactly how he somehow got trapped on the side of the mountain. And Bomani was there waiting. And Bomani just sees his son in his current form. And I think Bomani still is like trying to comfort his son, saying there's no shame in the way parents and children fight. And time is what wore him down. And Bomani just wants for him to be at peace. So Zhao and Kalunga then leave to the realm of the dead now that the three spirits have been pacified. So Kalunga can uphold his end of the bargain and return his Baba's spirit, which was the initial promise. Right. So after traveling through the realm, Zhao and Kalunga stare at a tree in the distance. And Kalunga says his heart beats with his ancestors now. Then asks Zhao if he's ready to perform his shamanly duties as you're staring at this tree. So Kalunga then reveals that he is actually Zhao's father. He's been posing as the god of death. And he wanted to accompany Zhao during this whole journey of this game to teach him some final lessons about life, about being a shaman, and about dealing with grief and loss. So I guess he had some sort of like omnipotent thing about him now that he had passed onto the afterlife, that he saw these other spirits had also had like similar unresolved like conflicts that could be a teaching moment for Zhao. So, you know, Zhao was in denial about his father's death, and maybe that's why he didn't recognize him traveling with him the whole time. I'm not 100% sure on that either, because it's not like his appearance changes, at least in the game. I don't know, maybe who we see as Kalunga is not what Baba looks like. I'm not sure. But the final fight was pretty interesting because it brought in pieces of all the previous boss fights, which I feel like furthers this message that Kalunga was trying to reflect and reinforce the lessons on life and shamanism that Zhao learned throughout every other boss fight. And like I said before, these boss fights are mostly symbolic. I've interpreted them as symbolic. So now it's just like a chance to apply like these life lessons that Zhao had learned. But once you beat him, Baba drops, and then Zhao runs to embrace him. So Baba remarks on how hard-headed and like arrogant Zhao is to believe he could even like barter with the god of death himself. And then Zhao asks if Baba is proud of him. And he had such sorrow in his voice, and it like, I don't know, it just instantly got to me. It made me feel sad. It felt a bit relatable, not gonna lie. Just of like wanting that validation. You want like someone like your parents to be proud of you. And you could hear that in Zhao's voice. Thankfully, Baba says he's always been proud. Zhao apologizes for being angry, feeling angry and scared. And Baba says that healing can only begin once we accept and allow our emotions to flow. So we can't hide or ignore them. And that's what Zhao was doing with his anger. He was letting them flow. He was processing the death and grief in his own way. Zhao couldn't save Baba from his fate, but he did save many other people from their own fates, or at least being fixated on their loved ones' deaths. So they say I love you to each other. Zhao performs like a ritual as Baba then crosses over to the afterlife. And that's pretty much the end of the game. Yeah, this game in general just hit me very hard. I mean, I've probably mentioned it before, how like death has been a little, not frequent, but like common in the past few years. So having to deal with like grief and loss of a loved one just has been just like on the forefront of my mind. So to see a game take this and do it in a very beautiful artistic way really touched me. I was so grateful for this. This game, even though like it did show these certain types of coping styles, I was still curious about other styles of coping due to the death of loved ones, in particular losing a child or a parent. And I know we had talked about this a bit before with Majora's Mask and talking about the 7 stages of grief, but just wanted to do a bit more on that. I wasn't ready to put this topic down. So one article examined parents coping with the death of a child and found a negative coping strategy that occurs and ends up being detrimental to both parents. So this is called partner-oriented self-regulation, POSR for short. And it's a term that was created to describe pretty much holding in grief for your partner's sake. You know, not showing that emotion, trying to stay strong for your partner. And they found that POSR has negative consequences for both the partner, even if only one is exhibiting this behavior. You know, I could see how this leads to negative outcomes, how holding in negative emotions leads to negative outcomes and harms both partners in a relationship. I mean, as you know, holding in emotions can lead to like greater stress, lashing out. It's like just not being able to process the emotion. So to be able to, I don't know, to have to hold that in, I could see that.
Consciously hold it in.
Yeah.
Because it's hard work to hold in emotions.
Yeah.
Especially when they bottle up. But yeah.
Another article found some other coping strategies that were used by parents when facing the loss of a child. One detailed the importance of combining an approach and avoidance coping strategy, which is essentially a balance of bringing yourself closer to the stressful situation as well as being able to withdraw. And they talked about pairing this approach and avoidance strategy with a self and family coping strategy, which involves pretty much a parent having to choose between comforting themselves and catering to the family's needs. The authors continued to say that a combination of both approach and avoidance and self and family, and fluidly moving between the two strategies is the best approach to coping with the death of a child. Pretty much not taking just a one method here. You know, it's not that you have to always be like diving in head first, only doing what's best for the family in order to get through this grief. No, they recommend like a combination of everything. It sounds like really just like being easy on yourself too, in order to best cope.
Self-compassion.
Right? Yeah. With that being said, although not all deaths in Tales of Kenzera involve the loss of a child, only the last one really did with Bomani and Gagorib, we can see how each character has their own coping strategy and are affected by the death. Liana with searching for that parental figure and then having to step up into the role that her previous mom has held, and Zhao too for that matter. But Zhao also with like doing everything he can to help prevent the death of another loved one, his friend Sabulana. And then Bomani with regret and wanting to make amends with his son because they left on not very good terms. So overall, this game was heavily emotional.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. As you could hear from the tone of my voice throughout the majority of this section. I was so grateful to go on that journey. I love being able to play a game that could make me feel like a negative emotion because it feels pretty easy to feel a positive emotion about video games a lot of times. Yeah, for sure. Like they're always fun. So whenever a game is able to bring me to some different headspace, I'm definitely grateful for that. And I appreciate being there, even if it does take me in a little too deep sometimes. And I'm like, okay, maybe I need to not get so negative about it. That's Tales of Kenzera. You didn't know the plot. Did you see the Kalunga being his father thing coming?
I had a feeling, but I was like, we'll see where we go with this, right? Because I think I made it through the first boss, made it to the forest, and I stopped at the forest.
Okay.
So I didn't. It's like what 25% of the game, maybe.
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah.
It felt pretty obvious at the end, but I wasn't thinking it up until that point.
Right.
I was just like, oh, this fool's never getting his Baba's spirit back. But what's going to happen instead? I'm like, oh shit, you were just traveling with him the whole time. And this was his final moments to be able to teach you a lesson about life and as well as let you get some more moments with your father without knowing. Because the relationship was very, like throughout the game when they're arguing and bickering, it was very parental. Once again, like I didn't realize how obvious that was until the big reveal. Yeah, I really like this game.
Okay. Huh. Yeah, no, I mean, from what I played, I enjoyed it, right? I got stuck on a certain part where I was like, okay, I think I'm good. Also, timing, right? I was back from my trip, so
Oh,
back to
yeah.
work, right? And then I think I was just like, man, I just want to play Persona 3R,
Yeah.
right? Like, I went 2 weeks without that game. I was like, I just want to keep playing. Yeah, and like, this is like my third time playing it. Right?
Oh,
Not Persona
man.
3R specifically, but like, I played the original, the one on PSP, and then this one.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I played it before, but I'm like, nah, I just want to play more Persona 3.
Yeah.
Right. And I hope we do get to that eventually because Persona 3,
It's a good
that's
one.
a depression simulator.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially your first time around.
Okay.
Yeah. That one hits.
I mean, yeah, I can't really think of anything else I'm going to play after Dragon's Dogma 2. So, you know what? We might as well just jump into what else we've been playing. So, yeah, I guess we might as well just start talking about what other games we've been playing. So, it sounds like you've still been enjoying Persona 3.
Yeah, I hit the 50-hour mark on it.
Okay.
So, and on PS5, it says I'm 54% done.
Oh, 54 at 50 hours.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is a long game, which I know I knew I was signing up for that, right? This is my third playthrough through this. But I'm really enjoying it. I love the turn-based mechanic. I love the kind of like things they changed. They just made the game a little bit like more approachable. Like there's this mechanic where you unlock like a dash, like you can dash, right? But there's a point where the dash becomes like a Sonic kind of dash, right? And you strike the enemy and it'll distress the enemy, meaning like when you start the battle, the enemy will be distressed and you can easily get crits on them.
I love when games
let the battle go quicker.
That's nice.
I really enjoy that mechanic. I really do like that. And then there's a new mechanic where it's hard to explain because you haven't played it yet, but essentially like there's these little treasure chests throughout that you can unlock. They like need a separate resource, like a specific resource, right?
Okay.
And this was not in the original. And when you do, sometimes it'll unlock this like green gate that you can go through. And it lets you instantly level up 2 characters that are in your party to your level. So let's say you have I'll just name Junpei, right? And Yukari are like level 30 and you're like level 50, right? And you're like, okay, I found the green door, you can instantly put them to level 50 now. It lets you pick 2 characters. Like the way it works is like they gain the XP, you just gotta put them in battle once and then they'll level up.
Oh, that's nice.
So now you're not grinding as much.
Yeah, so that
because you have a huge party. I think you get like maybe like a party of 10 or something, 9 or 10. So like, do you really want to level them all up?
Yeah, that's a lot to keep track of.
So I really enjoy that. But yeah, it's a really good game. The setting, the music, I mean, the aesthetics of it. I just really like this game. It's really fun. And this game came out in February or something. And Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was on the priority list, so after that I jumped into this. So I'm pretty sure I'll be done with P3R maybe in July.
At this rate, yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna take a while, know. But hey, we have Silent Hill 2 coming out.
Yeah,
right in October. Metaphor,
Refantasio.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one too. So I got time. I got time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I still want to jump into that game. I'm still just like slowly grinding through Dragon's Dogma 2. How's game, that? I like it. It always feels like I gotta dedicate enough time to play through it, or like a solid chunk of time. Because like if I have like 15 to 20 minutes to kill, it doesn't feel like the right game to play because there's a lot of like reorienting yourself to the game and trying to remember exactly what you were doing and what quests you wanted to follow and like where you got to go. I had a really cool moment with a sub quest though, like the last, I don't know, a few days ago, which was the last like chance I had to like really play it, sit down and play it for a couple hours, where some little kid was like missing and the grandpa, I think it was the grandpa, maybe the uncle, wanted me to go and find him. And I had to like ask around the town to see if anyone else saw the kid, if they knew what happened to him and like what he was like doing or wearing or something to give me some clue on where I could follow and find this kid. So turns out homeboy was taken by a pack of wolves into their den and he liked to pick moon glow. It was some sort of flower that glows in the moonlight. And because he picked a bunch of them, he just was like, I don't know, I guess he always had flower petals around him or something like that, or he was just like leaking flower petals. So I went to an area where someone said they last saw him, and there I found a bunch of the moon bloom flowers And then I found a trail of some flowers, and you could only see them. Well, you could see them during the day, but at night it's way more prevalent.
Okay, yeah.
And so then I just followed that trail for a good, it might have been like 20 minutes. I was just like tracking it down. Sometimes I'd encounter some other enemy or something to try, and that would like come up on the path. So then I would have to take care of it. And then I eventually went into this like wolf den and saw the kid like lying down. And I believe this was a timed quest, and like you could know, because it'll show like a little clock or some sort of indication, maybe a timer, that if you don't finish this soon, like something bad will happen, or like the quest will end, and then presumably whoever you're supposed to save is not going to be saved. So I saw this was a timer quest. I was a little worried about when that timer was going to reach its end because it doesn't say. And then as soon as I get to that wolves den, I don't know if it's supposed to do this every time or not, but I saw the wolves just like instantly start attacking him. Once I went in, I was like, oh shit,
they're waiting for you.
Yeah. So then I had to like jump in there, killed the wolves. And then it was a little annoying because he then follows you back. He was like, oh shit, thank you for rescuing me. I have no idea what happened. I just blacked out while a wolf was dragging me for some reason. But I'm going to follow you back to town. So lead the way, please. So I did that. And I guess when I got close to the town, he got a little too far away because I guess he doesn't keep up with your pace if you're sprinting. So then homeboy was like, oh shit, he went so far away. I guess I better go back to the last place I knew, which was the wolves den. By the time I get to the town, I'm like, okay, cool, quest complete. Where's homeboy? Wait a second. Why isn't the grandpa saying like, thanks for bringing him back? And then I see, I think it was on the map, there's like a little yellow circle back where I found him at the wolves den. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Oh man. So that killed like another 20 minutes just having to run back. He was still alive. He was still alive.
The wolves didn't respawn.
The wolves did not respawn. It wasn't like Alan Wake where it's an endless respawn. Yeah, that was just kind of annoying. It was a very cool moment of like using context clues that were built into the world, but then instantly like kind of brought it down a peg when something glitched out, and now I had to like essentially redo it.
Could you carry the kid?
You could, and I was going to, but then you walk at like half speed and your stamina drains like twice as fast if you try to sprint. So it became like unsustainable. It was easier just to slightly push up on the thumbstick than it was to carry him the whole way. But yeah, I'm mostly having a good time with that game. Like I said, it's just hard to play in a short spurt.
Oh, definitely.
So I feel like I'm still itching. I haven't played Hades 2 in a while. I'm still kind of itching to play it, like do a run, just because it's easier just to like jump into that, or even like pause in the middle of a run. But yeah, those are kind of the two games I've been playing most right now.
Okay, yeah. Same. I mean, Persona 3, fighting games, of course. That's like every weekend now, right? Slayer just came out in Guilty Gear Strive, which is the last DLC character for this season. And my God, that character is really good. Like there's some brain rot with that character where it's like, I'm just mashing the button and then going into like a special move, and it's like the opponent's half health, and I'm like, I did not.
You didn't try.
Yeah, I didn't try for that. I did not deserve to do that to this person. And so Slayer's like a vampire, right? And he's very strong. He's like one of the strongest characters in Guilty Gear.
Okay.
Right, and his theme is fire, like amazing.
Vampire with fire.
Yeah, it's like dang, like that theme that he has is really good, and just the way that he plays is like feel really cool playing him. Right, and then Akuma dropped in Street Fighter 6 like about 2 weeks ago or something.
Oh yeah.
So they've been playing Akuma. Everyone's enjoying the balance patch or not enjoying it depending on your main. Right? Zangief doing more damage. Great.
Yeah.
Cool. Love it. Now let's just give Zangief a teleport. So he can teleport behind you.
Are you serious?
That would never happen.
Yeah.
I'd love that. But yeah, I mean that's about it, I think. Oh, Paper Mario.
Oh yeah.
So I put in like 4 hours the previous night.
Nice.
So I finished chapter 1 into chapter 2, and like Paper Mario, I played tons of times before in the past. Right? But like replaying it, like the nostalgia is just strong with this one, right? And they added like quality of life things as well, like a fast travel type system.
Oh, that's useful.
So that's really cool. The battles are awesome. I mean, it's just a really good time. This is the best Paper Mario game. Honestly.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
RPG, you get tons of party members. You can upgrade, your health, your magic points. They're called flower points. And like badges, which essentially lets you equip like little differences in the battle. So like you can make your stomp stronger, or you can make your hammer stronger, right? Or you can disable your jump altogether so your hammer does more damage, right? So you just don't jump at all in battle.
Interesting.
Yeah, so there's like these interesting badges that kind of spice up the battle as well.
Yeah, I forgot that game dropped. I really want to play it. I'm hoping I'll get a chance to at some point. That State of Play also dropped. I'm still, I know it wasn't in the State of Play, but I'm also still looking forward to the Elden Ring DLC. I'm thinking of just doing a brand new run, starting a character.
I wish they would let us know, like, hey, this is where the DLC would
I think
start.
they do.
Do they?
I think
have
they
announced
said
that yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think a lot of people know where it is.
Okay.
I know I've heard some podcasters say that. I just don't remember where.
Okay.
It's not end game though. It's not after the game.
I know I probably won't be jumping into it right away. I know my brother's excited for it.
Yeah.
He's like ready. He's ready for it. I'm like, how about you play through it first? I'm
still
probably going to be playing Persona 3, not going to lie.
Yeah.
And then, maybe I'll get to the Elden Ring DLC, but I'm
dropping like 3 weeks. So yeah.
And then we have SMT 5 Vengeance coming out too.
Oh, right.
Which I don't know if I'm going to pick it up. I played through 5, like all the paths. And I'm like, and then Atlas games usually drop in price really quickly. And again, I'll still be playing Persona 3R. So I'm good on games for now.
I'm so excited for that Astrobot game. You have no idea.
Is that come out?
September, I think.
Oh, so this year?
Yeah, this year. Maybe it was November. It was either September or November. But did you play the free one?
I played like an hour or two of it.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, this is cool. And then I think Street Fighter 6 was out.
Oh,
on my PS5, so I was like, all right, Street Fighter 6 time. But yeah, I mean, for the direct or the State of Play, Monster Hunter Wilds looks amazing.
That looked interesting.
I'm hyped for Silent Hill 2. Even if it's a hot trash fire, we're playing it.
Yeah. No. I'm there with you. We'll definitely play that game. And then maybe play the second one, the original second one.
We can fit it in. Yeah. Before Alan Wake 2 is like 20 hours or something.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I need to double check. It might be longer than that.
And there's no DLC for it yet.
No. We also I never went back to the Final Fantasy 16 DLC. Did you?
Oh, no, I don't think I did. No. We'll wait for a price drop on that one. How about that?
Yeah, Alan Wake 2. Yeah,
okay.
18 to 20 hours. Okay, cool. That's doable. Awesome. Well, I guess that kind of wraps it up. We're also thinking about just saving this like last segment to just do our own pod on that and like just a very like off the cuff
video games, right?
Yeah, just talk about video games like once a week. Exactly. I think maybe we could use that clever idea of Scatterbrain for that one. We'll title those like Scatterbrain, and the rest of them could just be like Mind Controllers episodes. Yeah, that way we can, I feel like Joe and I like text a lot about it, so that way we can like get our thoughts out probably in better form than just text.
Yeah.
And then we could like turn that into a pod and like push that out so people will still have some stuff to listen to in case you care about that at all. Which is why I'll name it separately. That way you know which ones are the Psych Deep Dive episodes and which one will just be us chatting about games. Thank you all for listening. Thank you, Joe, for the Alan Wake deep dive. That was great.
I mean, thank you for the Tales of Kenzera. And that was cool. Like this interested me like maybe I should actually play this game. Like,
oh, really?
It's just Persona 3R, right?
Yeah.
There's just so much to play and so little time now that it's just like, yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
But
thank you, everyone.
Cool. Thank you all. Take care of yourselves. We love you. Till next time. Bye-bye.